Alright, so yesterday I took a video editing Rogue Tank. I'm going to be coming out with an update for it. As it is in early access, it is a game I need to be working on. And what we did yesterday, so let's hit play here. Okay, so that's a little loud, so let me turn that down. Alright, so it looks like we added another enemy type. A couple enemies are spawning on top of each other, it looks like. But none of them are moving and there's no collisions. So instead of the enemy colliding with the player and then stopping, actually I think we're just going to have them do damage, and the point will be to avoid the enemies at all costs. So now that we have a very fluid way to spawn enemies just off of this simple code here, and then a way to draw them to the screen using a for loop with the size of the vector, what we're going to do is work on enemy movement. So right here, this is my old enemy controller script. This actually looks like it's for a very specific enemy type. So if I remember right, because I might actually have a backup here, an old version of Rogue Tank. Yeah, let's open this up. So an older version of Rogue Tank, it had collisions with the enemies for the shield, and it also had right here, so every time the enemies moved, instead of separating the function, it was right like this. We're checking if the global bounds intersected with the player would take damage. If it was 0, it's game over. And if it wasn't, in the X direction or Y direction at the player, it would move the enemy there. And this was happening all within this window function. So as you can imagine, for level 1, level 2, level 3, that is the same function, right? And it needs to be actually separated for scalability. So that's what we're going to do here today on this. So I'm going to come into here into controller.hpp. You have a rush player script or function, a move player function. So we're going to leave this because Space Sludge here, I believe, was a boss I added for level 2, and I think also level 3. So if I remove that currently, it might break things that I don't want to deal with at the moment. However, what we're going to do here is we're going to make a function. We're going to call it chase player. It seems pretty reasonable. We're actually not going to set that up here. This is just the header file. Basically, this is a template. I'm just kind of looking. Looks like we had some type of animations. They were based off a clock, the animation, so to speak. I'm thinking the only thing we need to reference here is perhaps player and the enemy type. I'm pretty sure, right? So let's include, and then we're actually already including spawner. Yeah. So that was anyway. So we're gonna include this, and we're gonna call say just type 1, and then we're gonna take a reference to the player. Now you could, and you could say it's a pointer, right? You could do the same thing here. Now, when you do a pointer like this, and I'll just show a quick example. So let's go over into the controller script itself. Enemy controller. So, like I was saying, you can do pointers, and I think technically it is more correct to do so. However, it's the same way both ways. To be completely honest, it's actually a lot easier to do the other way. I'll show you why. So right now it looks like I did not make it public. So coming in, yep, looks like I didn't make it public like this. That's why I couldn't find it there. And yeah, we need to give the class a name. Right, so we're just going to call this enemy controller. Yeah, seems about decent. Alright, so coming down here into enemy controller. Type enemy controller, chase player. Right, so with these being pointers, so like a pointer to type 1, and then like a player pointer to player. If I was to say something like type 1 dot rectangle dot get global bounds dot intersects with player dot body dot get global bounds. So basically what that's saying is like, hey, if this rectangle shape intersects with this rectangle shapes, the global bounds is basically like the shape, right? Notice that need the parentheses. And about there. Alright, so not only does it become an arrow, some of the things, if we were to do this function here, for example, if we came over here in a window, over in the while loop, let's say we, where's the player moving? Just for, put it kind of coupled all in the one spot. That would be, okay, yep, right here. So let's say we did, so it would be like enemy controller E controller, for example, as the constructor. And you'd have to say like E controller chase player. And when we're taking like enemy type 1 like this and player, you actually have to pass those as references. Now, this, doing it like this is fine. This is perfect, and honestly, this is probably what they do in the industry. However, I am doing this by myself, and I would rather not have to type ampersand. So if I leave the ampersand out and I come up into controller and I type the ampersand here, so instead of taking a argument of pointer of type 1 or a pointer of player, and we go into the controller here, just to make sure that this has the correct arguments, and then we're going to have to change these arrows into periods. Now, when we do this function in window, you don't have to do any ampersands here, and that's the reason I like to pass by reference instead of passing a reference as an argument. Or I like to pass a reference as an argument into a function, so that when I actually place what I'm referencing it, it's just that instead of an ampersand to that, because I was passing a pointer by reference type of stuff. So literally it does the same exact thing though. Just easier in my opinion. Doesn't mean do it. By all means, you probably should do it I can't quite say the proper way, but I had a teacher for a while telling me that it's just a very, very terrible thing to do that would get you fired. So just keep that in mind if you're going to be working in the industry. You probably should be passing things by pointer, not by reference. anyway, so if the player, if the that guy intersects the player, you should probably discipline the player, right? So player's health should probably subtract. No, we're going to decrement it. And I'm going to say here, if type 1, and we're going to say the rectangle get position. So basically we're going to check its position in the X direction. If it's less than the player's, I put that in a square bracket. We're going to check that against the player's body's position, also in the X. Then we're going to move that guy, right? So knowing that they're in vectors, we're going to try one of two things. I think we're going to have to do a for loop, so I might as well do that first. We can try the other way as well. So I'm going to say from int I into type 1 dot all type dot size. And then here we would say like type 1 dot all type at the I value rectangle dot move. And then we're going to give this SF vector, which isn't the same as the vector I was just talking about. So a standard template library vector is a list. It's a list. How big is it? This is the size, right? This vector for the SFML API, it's more of a position, right? It's more of distance, kind of like math. So we're going to move him, if we're to the left of the player, so to speak, right? We probably should move him to the right. So it's going to be positive. We're going to do 2 and then nothing in the Y. Or, yeah, nothing in the Y. I'm going to copy this. Actually, we're going to copy that whole thing. And I'm going to say otherwise. And we're going to flip this here. So if he's to the right of the player, should move him left. Now in SFML, up and down is backwards. So I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so right now, if the player is above, or if the enemy is above the player, we need to move him down, not up, right? Because negative would be up in this case. And otherwise, if he is below the player, we need to be moving him upward. This way, he should chase the player the entire time. I'm almost wondering too if this would be here, right? So because it could. Then this would be of all type. You know what? We're going to try it like this at first, see what happens. But no, actually, no, we're just going to fix it now because it probably would work a lot better like this. All right, so we're going to take those out. Yep. That 4 should be there. And then I'm going to hit Control, then KD. So that's kind of like a chord that you can do. What it does is it resets your indentation, right? So if I do Control KD, it's just going to reset that to a proper indentation. And then here, we're just going to say all. Yeah, something like that, right? Like dot all type 1 at I. Just copy that like that. And so be like this. If all type 1 it might, you know, this might actually be kind of funky too, logically speaking, because what I'm seeing here is it might actually be the case that all the enemies at once would be moving at the player, but at the same time, that's basically what we want. We don't want to discriminate against what enemy is actually going to be doing the chasing. So let's give this a shot. We already put it here. So in theory, I hit play. So last time I was cleaning the files, and I'm hoping it'll happen. No, it actually didn't. So, okay. Looks like, X and the Y's. Right, so let's go back to the enemy controller. Looks like my X and my Y's got a little crossed, right? Because instead of this being below, it would be above. And then instead of this being above, it would be below. Curious how the one didn't want to. Interesting. Oh, probably because he's not all typed. All type, all type, all type, all type, all type, all type, type, all type. Funky. Anyway, so that seemed to have worked pretty decently. So what we would do here is also, though, I believe the player health should have been going down, right? So let's check that. Right, so it did, or it will. Yep, looks like it does go down. Just taking a minute until he's actually dead. So yeah, basically the same scenario for the next enemy type. And there probably is a way, this is basically the same code, right? To just take in, instead of like a set enemy type, just like a what would it be? Kind of like another class that just has, I don't know if that's possible quite for myself. I know it's probably more than possible, but let's try it, I guess. Come here into spawner. So you know how we have the spawner type 1, spawner type 2 class. Well, what if we had like a class just spawns, right? And in spawns we had a spawn enemy type 1 called type 1 and a spawn enemy type 2 called type 2. Make it public. And then could I be enemy controller, my bad. Could I make a reference to spawn? Oh, what would that be called? Spawns at type. Is that going to be doable? Yeah, actually it might be the same amount of code when it's done, but it's going to be kind of better, honestly. So I'm going to push Control and Alt at the same time. I'm going to make several cursors. I'm just going to do that. That way it's a little quicker. Looks like something's yeah, because we'll fix that in a second. But we'll just take this and do it again. Except it would be for 2 here and here. Yep, so slowly but surely we will test this. Just have to replace all these ones. And like I said, I think it actually turned out to be the same amount of code, except for instead of having 2 different functions, we can actually have one function that just passes in both of these things here. And that would have been in controller. Nope. There it is. So here, it's be called spawns. It's a reference called the type. And then I almost want to say, because here, I'm going to take in just a type, right? So instead of doing it like this, probably would have more like spawns type, and then we're gonna grade that out for a minute. Type dot type 1 So yeah, instead of just saying enemy type 1, it'd be type 1. Right. Okay. And it'll be very similar here, because instead of type 1, it's going to be type 2. So boom, boom, boom. And no, that part's going to be correct. Oh, you know what? I'd probably name those both type 1, honestly, for that. Yeah, probably. Yeah, so that's even less code. But I'd be curious if it actually operates, right? So it should just taken a type here. And then it's probably not so happy with me down here, right? Okay, yeah, because we're drawing. The drawing is taking in a type 1. What if it wasn't? What if it's just taking in spawns? So instead of having 2 different drawing methods, we would have these kind of like this, and then it'd be dot type 1, dot type 1. This would be dot type 2, 2, and same here, 2, dot 2. We'll just change this inside of the draw header file. Yeah, take that out completely. We're just going to actually rename that. So it's going to appear like it's actually broken still right here, right? It's going to still have the green line because changing the name. And now that when we go back to enemy controller, or no, my bad, because that's spawner, right? So it'd be Was it? No, it's in draw. My bad. Yep, we're drawing. Types. Yep, so boom, and then in window, we just have one called types, and it would be taking in the type. All right, so that might have been a little quick, might have been a little slow. I'm not sure which, but we're gonna see if this works. It's kind of a unique on-the-spot idea that would be nicer, honestly. Okay, cool. So sometimes I've noticed maybe it's not this particular thing I was thinking of, but sometimes I've noticed if I clean this solution after changing header files, then I push play, sometimes the errors aren't actual errors. Now, if these are errors here, I'm going to guess doing it this way just doesn't work as intended. So we're going to come down. Type 2 is not a member of spawns. I wonder what it means by that. It's not a member. It's in type specific. It is not a member. Is not a member of spawns. Looks like a member. But, as I was saying, I'm not sure if that would work like that. Do I have to inherit from like something like that? Can I inherit twice? See, I didn't think so. See if I have less errors. Is it still 70s? Oh, it's even more. 90s. Okay, so it's not a member. Well, I'm going to pause the video here, and that way, you know, I'm not going to waste your guys' time while I search up. All right, so I figured out I made it kind of a silly mistake. Yeah, we can actually do this, and it is probably going to be a lot better. So when we hit play here, we get a bunch of errors, right? Like 50 plus, you know. And I was looking on different Stack Overflow type stuff. I was searching in unknown override specifier, not a member. And when I typed in unknown override, one person said C++ compiles from the top down. When I first read that, I was thinking, well, that doesn't help me at all. But honestly, it's what that is, right? So like, we're gonna hit what type 1 is, we're gonna hit what type 2 is, and we're gonna hit here, right? Because this knows what type 1 is, type 2 is. It needs to know that before it hits it. So now it loads. It does what we wanted, right? So both enemy types are coming down to the player. It looks like a few of them are slightly broken, right? They're kind of all moving in like a weird line altogether instead of a more cattywampus, so to speak. So next time we'll make it more random, less robotic like that. But yeah, thank you